Thanks so much for joining us for your reporter behind the story. The purpose of this segment is to give viewers a look at how a story came together by talking to your reporter who put it together. Right now, we're remembering Basketball Hall of Famer Bill Walton. The two-time NBA champ died from cancer at the age of 71. Your reporter Andrew Haubner tells us about Walton's special connection to Boulder.
It's National Popcorn Day, please.
You might know Bill Walton for this.
Are you kidding me?
Or that. But to Pasta J's owner Jay Alowski, he knew Walton as a family man.
90% of our conversation was about family, and he loved his wife so much. He was still in love with his wife, Lori.
The two met years ago when the Basketball Hall of Famer made a point to always come by and eat with Alowski when work brought him to Boulder.
Very fast, quick on his feet, always knew what to say. He was really, he was a very special individual.
Walton's love for Boulder extended to Dead & Company shows at Folsom Field, waxing poetic about the Flatirons, and a deep love for Ralphie the Buffalo.
He's loved in Boulder so much because he loved Boulder so much. So that the love was always reciprocated, and I'm just sad to see him go.
Former Colorado player Evan Batty met Walton when he was just a young boy and got the chance to do some fun things with the legend, like play ping pong.
You know, that was a special moment for me and him, just to kind of bond and be together.
And that cheer spread to everyone, even our own CBS Colorado team.
Once the game ended and they did their post game, he turned the chair around, and I'd say people lined up from the floor of the event center all the way to the concourse to go down and get their picture with him. And my son was one of them.
A life punctuated by a love of Colorado, of basketball, and of the people that he got to meet.
And he was very personable and very gracious and treated everybody around him like they were Bill Walton.
Joining me now, a couple of CU grads, your reporter Andrew Haubner and managing editor of sports at CBS Colorado, Eric Christensen. Andrew, you put that story together. I want to start with you. When you heard about Walton's passing, you knew immediately where you wanted to go for an interview to talk about Bill, and that was Pasta J's in Boulder. Why?
Yeah, so that connection between him and Jay Alowski is pretty well known. I mean, there have been broadcasts plenty of times, Eric, where out of nowhere, Bill Walton just name drops Pasta J's. I love Pasta J's. I love Jay Alowski. And so naturally, that's the first place you go for an interview like this, is one of the characters in a story that goes beyond sports. And we talk a lot about trying to make stories that resonate with people off of the field. And Jay was a great guy because Jay is not just somebody affiliated and associated with Bill Walton, but he is a person that is outside of the realm of sports in that way.
You also wanted to interview Eric. Why?
Yes, well, so all three of us are sports guys or former sports guys in some way, shape, or form, right? And I don't know about you guys, it was always a pet peeve of mine when news staffers at my station would go find other people in sports media when we have experts right there in the building. And so Eric was the first guy that I thought of, and members of our team, Romy and Rod, who have been in this sports media environment for a long time in Colorado, who have had experience with Bill Walton, to see if they wanted to lend their voices to it, because why go to somebody else when we have a CBS Sports Colorado team?
Eric, you talked about it in Andrew's piece, but that opportunity that you and your son Davis had to meet Bill, what was that like, and what do you remember about that?
You know what I remember about it? And I used to tell my son and I, really my experience with Bill Walton is just seeing him at the event center and watching him call games on the Pac-12 network. Obviously, being a Buff fan and a Pac-12 fan, I was watching a lot of games, so I heard a lot of Bill Walton. And my son would watch him with me. I brainwashed him as a Buff fan since the age of 2. But I remember my son just could not stand him. Dad, he doesn't talk about the game. He's talking about all this other stuff. He's not talking about, why Josh Scott's playing well, or why this is happening, or why this is happening. And I said, Davis, but you just don't understand. Like, he used to be a great player. Like, you see him now as this older guy who's kind of a character and all this stuff. But I said, but Davis, he was a great player. We were looking it up when you did that interview. As a senior at UCLA, he went 21 of 22 from the field in the national championship game, scored 44 points. Like, in the biggest game of his life at that moment, he put up that kind of performance. Bill Walton was a great basketball player, but a lot of people don't know it. They know him as kind of this character on the broadcast who talks about anything but basketball. So actually, when my son went down there, and Bill Walton was super gracious with not only my son, but dozens of other people, and took pictures and signed autographs with everything. I think it kind of turned my son around. I was happy to see that because, the Harbaughs like to say, who has it better than us? I think Bill Walton may have had it better than the Harbaughs. I mean, he lived a great life, and his legacy is fantastic.
Well, and you know, those two things that you just talked about, one, Bill's calls on games. He was polarizing one way or the other. Right?
Absolutely.
You either loved it or you hated it, but I think most people kind of grew to love it and appreciate that because that's who he was. But then everybody that we've talked to says he was so gracious with his time. He was so gracious to the people around him. You had a chance to cover sports in the Pac-12, which, of course, you know, the Conference of Champions, as Walton used to famously say multiple times on a broadcast. And you got a chance to see how he prepared for games, and his calls of games were unique, and his preparation for games was unique as well.
It was definitely unique. And again, as sports guys up here, when you're doing play-by-play, you usually have what's called boards out in front of you that's got guys on the roster, statistics about them, little interesting character bits that you can weave in. Bill Walton didn't have any of that. Bill Walton had essentially what I think was about 150 pages of just paper. The same way investigative reporters, you know, have notes all over their desk like a beautiful mind. Bill Walton had that on the desk next to Dave Pash's incredibly neat and beautiful game boards that he would have. But within the wild pastiche of everything he had was all of this unbelievable information about his own experiences, players on a much deeper level, the environment, the city, the college, what they were doing with the sustainability initiatives, like the environmental programs at the school. I mean, it was all over the place, but that was the kind of stuff that in a conference that I think really hung its hat, for better or worse, on trying to explain to people that there's more than just sports that makes up the Pac-12. He really embodied that in his broadcast because for him, it was about everything. It was about the athlete. It was about the person that was the athlete. It was about the school. It was about the programs and everything around it. And for better or worse, because there is no Pac-12 anymore, that's what it was, and that's who he was.
You know, we saw it in the story, the ping pong table. Is there some sort of significance between that game, Walton, and the Buffs?
Yeah, so I was told a very cool story by more than one Buff staffers on the day that Walton passed. They have a ping pong table in there, and Bill Carton, the director of operations, is apparently not the pinball wizard, but the ping pong king, you know? And so if you beat Bill Carton, you can sign the table. No exceptions. No one can sign it unless they beat Bill Carton. Bill Walton never beat Bill Carton, but they loved Walton so much. He's the only guy to have never beaten Bill Carton and still signed the table. So there's a piece of him in that in the CU Event Center that is essentially inscribed forever.
Well, and that shows you the type of you know, legacy that he carried on and the type of person that Bill Walton was, that he got to sign a table even though he never beat him.
Yeah. I keep thinking that if we would have had one more season of the Pac-12, we could have got Dion and Bill Walton riding their bikes around Boulder. Did you know how Bill Walton was an avid cyclist?
Yep.
Prime has his Prime bike that he rides around practice. That's the one thing I think we missed, was a Walton Prime bike ride.
Eric, quickly, I want to get your thoughts on this. You shared some sentiments about Bill Walton with our producer. Do you mind sharing kind of what you said as we close this out?
Refresh my memory.
Okay, well.
So, you know.
We need more of Bill Walton.
We need more of Bill Walton, right? Like, he was such a well-read, well-rounded person. Like, he wasn't just a basketball player talking basketball. He tried to educate each and every one of us about sustainability issues, as Andrew referenced, about Native American issues, about, you know, the history of Oregon and Washington up in the Pacific Northwest, and the tech companies in Silicon Valley where Cal and Stanford was. And I know a lot of people didn't like that stuff, but he was a well-rounded, gracious man who just, you know, we need more of that in this society, not less of that. And hopefully that's his legacy. I mean, we'll always remember the big red head. I remember his headband when he played for the Portland Trail Blazers and the flowing red hair. But as a person, Bill Walton cared immensely about many things, and they were all pretty good causes. And I think, I hope that's what his legacy ends up being.
Well, thank you guys for being here and for sharing your stories about Bill Walton. He will definitely be missed. Andrew is your reporter in Jefferson County, by the way. He wants to hear your story ideas. Give him a call or send him a tip through our website, cbscolorado.com.